Is workers' compensation insurance required in California? Every state has different requirements for workers' compensation insurance. In California, though, the answer is clear. Workers' compensation is mandatory for all employers, albeit the corporate only has one employee. Sole proprietors are generally not required to possess workers' compensation insurance unless they're a roofer. In that occupation, you're required to hold workers' comp for yourself, albeit you don't employ anyone else. California law requires a business owner to hold workers' comp insurance for workers who regularly add California, albeit the business is headquartered in another state. Is workers' comp required for part-time employees? How many hours an employee works doesn't affect his or her entitlement to workers' compensation. It's possible to urge an independent contractor workers' compensation waiver, but California law presumes anyone who works for an employer to be an employee. If a claim is filed, the burden is on the employer to prove that somebody is an independent contractor and not an employee. Do you need workers' compensation if you are self-employed? How many hours an employee works doesn't affect his or her entitlement to workers' compensation. It's possible to urge an independent contractor workers' compensation waiver, but California law presumes anyone who works for an employer to be an employee. If a claim is filed, the burden is on the employer to prove that somebody is an independent contractor and not an employee. What are the penalties for not having California workers' comp insurance? Failure to hold workers' compensation insurance in California may be a criminal offense. The penalties include: a stop-loss order is usually issued to the business, violation of which could end in a fine of $10,000 or more and imprisonment in the county jail for up to at least 1 year. The uninsured employer's benefit fund could file a lien against an employer's property if it must pay benefits to an injured worker of an illegally uninsured employer. A penalty assessed by the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement might be twice the quantity the employer would have paid in premiums during the time of uninsurance, or $1,500 per employee during the period of uninsurance. If a worker is injured and therefore the employer didn't have workers' comp, the employer might be responsible for a penalty of $10,000 per employee at the time of injury if the case is compensable, or $2,000 per employee at the time of injury if that specific case was found to be non-compensable. The maximum penalty is $100,000. A workers' compensation program is required. A company may self-fund or buy insurance for the financial liability of this program. A company may self-fund if it meets the following criteria: $5.0 million shareholders' equity. Average net profits of $500,000 per year for the last 5 years. Certified, independently audited financial statements. If a company does not qualify or does not wish to self-fund, a workers' compensation insurance policy is required. Yes, and it is required in every work situation, normally covered under your owner's insurance. If not, you can obtain a policy through the CA State Fund. The annual premium is based on the annual salary the employee makes, and then they monitor all the tax filings each quarter, and then at the end of the year they will do an audit to make sure the client paid the correct premium. Yes, every California employer using employee labor, including family members, must purchase workers' compensation insurance. California law requires employers to have workers' compensation insurance if they have even one employee. If you are a roofer and don't have any employees, you are still required to carry workers' compensation insurance. Yes, workers' compensation is required in California. Workers' compensation insurance became mandatory for California employers since 1913. California employers must either carry WC insurance, with the highest premiums in the U.S., or self-insure, which most big employers do.